Hey folks, Pete here from Irish Times, and today I'm going to compare and contrast Thai culture versus Western culture to give you an idea of what you can expect if you're going to move over here, live here long term, particularly if you're going to work over here, and especially if you're going to actually open a business over here. So let's get into it, and we're going to do it at a great little coffee shop down here in the Thong Law area where all the rich people live. This is a great little coffee shop here, folks, in Thong Law called Patom Organic Living. And straight away you feel like you've been transported to a jungle. It's very, very relaxing, especially because Bangkok can be so hectic. And this coffee shop is a bit unique because they use traceable organic raw materials to make their products. They've got Thai desserts. They even have conditioners and shampoos there as well. And it's a great place just to come and relax. So the inside is nice little seating area, but let's check out the garden. So the beautiful garden out here, and on the weekends this place is like a good place to take kids so they can play around in the garden. And they've got some new decorations. I reckon Chad from CB Media would be able to ride that with his big long legs and long arms. I certainly wouldn't. Yeah, beautiful garden. And even goes out the back here, there's another big garden out the back. But yeah, like I said, we're in Thong Law, we're in the rich area. You can even see by these apartments, they're old but they're really big. They're big huge balconies. So I'm standing like in the middle of this kind of a jungle area now because there's a massive big rain cloud above my head. I got caught in a shower on the way here. So yeah, so we're dealing with that now. Anyway, it's the rainy season here and that's what happens. So, okay, so let's get into it, right? So what I'm going to talk about today is, like, there's a big difference coming to Thailand on holiday, staying for a couple of weeks. People generally tend to stay in the tourist zones where they have all their Western comforts. The Thai people speak pretty good English there. And so there's a difference than living here long term, and particularly if you're actually working here long term, right? Now, I'm going to put a disclaimer out there. What I'm going to say today, what I'm going to talk about, is not just made up out of my head. It's a combination of research that was done on culture by a Dutch guy called Geert Hofstede, and he put forward 6 dimensions of culture, okay, 6 criteria. And with those 6 criteria you can compare and contrast countries, national cultures, right? So we're going to use his research plus my experience of living here 10 years. So I think I'm very good. I think living here 10 years, I think if you live anywhere 10 years you're going to be a good judge of the culture there, right? So that his research combined with my culture, my understanding of the Thai culture, and basically Irish culture because I'm Irish. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. So the first dimension that Geert Hofstede put forward is called power distance. And what that means is, it means how people accept inequalities in a society. So if you score high, if a country scores high, it means that people are willing to accept massive differences in power. Like, you've got your place in the hierarchy, that's your place. You could be low down in the hierarchy, the social hierarchy, or you could be high up. Oh, no one's calling me. Okay, so as I was saying, a country that scores high in power distance, it means that the people there, they're willing to accept inequalities of power. They've got their place in the social hierarchy, that's where they're at. Someone else is higher or lower than them and they're okay to accept it. A country that scores low is going to be, going to value equality, kind of like you're not better than me, I'm not better than you type of thing, right? Now Thailand scores pretty high on power distance with a score of 64 out of 100 on Geert Hofstede's research, okay? So according to his research, that people here accept inequalities of power, okay? Now, if I add my own experience on top of that, I would say I would agree with him on that one, right? If you're working over here, there's a strict chain of command. Management style is very autocratic, okay? Decisions are made at the top, and there's no room, there's no leeway to question decision making, you know. There's a kind of a like a fear of the manager. You know, they're someone different. They're not part of the team. Like, that's the manager, we are the team, this person makes the decisions. Employees are expected to show respect and loyalty to the manager, right? And in turn, the manager is kind of the leader who's supposed to take care of the group. One decision maker. There's no room for participation, and that's not just Thailand. That's Asia in general. Okay, so we're going to contrast that with Ireland. Ireland scores 28 out of 100 for power distance, meaning that Irish people value equality. And actually, Ireland scored lower than America. America came in at 40 out of 100. Now, I thought America would score lower. I thought America landed a free, home of the brave type of thing. I thought they're more, say, individual, and they, you know, I think they're based on, their country was founded on equality. Well, I mean, that's up for debate anyway. But Ireland comes in pretty low, and that basically means that, like, hierarchies, we have established hierarchies, but they're more for convenience. Working in Ireland is very much like, there's no kind of fear of the manager. Kind of like, yeah, like I said earlier, like, no one's better than anyone else. Like, working in Ireland, you're encouraged to give your opinion. You're encouraged to, like, decision making is made by consensus, right? People are encouraged to speak up. There is no fear, like I said, there is no fear of management, okay? So that's just one example. You can just weigh the two up. They're basically contrasting arguments based on this research. And these are things that, like, if you're going to open a business over here, you kind of need to consider that. Especially if you're going to be the manager, like, you might find it difficult if you had all Thai staff, you know, you might find it hard to get their opinion, or to question your decision making. And for me, sometimes in Asia, like working over here in Thailand, it is a bit frustrating, because I find myself, like, I see that this decision may not be the correct decision. I want to speak up, but I know that if I was to speak up, it may cause problems. So that's for Westerners coming over here, especially if you're going to work in a Thai business and you're going to have a Thai manager, you're going to have to adapt to the culture. And if you're going to manage a Thai team, you're going to have to adapt as well, because it's a combination, isn't it? Okay, the second dimension we have is called individualism, and that means how people value their self-image, right? Do they value the I, or do they value the we? Okay, so if I ask you, America, okay, think of American society. Do they put the emphasis on the person, me, I, or is it about the group, we and us? Okay, if you were to say America values I and the person, right, you're correct. America scores 91 out of 100 for individualism, which means that, like, well, let's take the American dream as an example. In America, the American dream is, well, you're going to work really hard. It's you against the world. You're going to go out into the world. You're going to work really hard. You're going to get that big car. You're going to get that big house. You're going to get it, man. Come on, man. Like, that's you know, when I went to America, I was just fascinated by, like, how everybody is on the take. They're all about, it's like, just so outgoing and like, focusing on themselves to be as best as they can be. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you contrast that to Asia, whereas Thailand gets a score of, Thailand comes in at, well, like, let me see, Thailand comes in at 20 out of 100, which is polar opposite, which means the group is so important. Let's take a look at the family unit. In Thailand, there are some families, particularly the Thai Chinese community, that they live together their whole lives. And if you talk to a kid and you ask a kid, like, what do you want to do in the future? The kid will say, oh, I want to be a doctor. And then you might say, well, do you really want to be a doctor? And the kid could say, well, my dad wants me to be a doctor. And you might ask the kid, why? And the kid will say, well, my dad wants me to be a doctor. My brother is going to be a lawyer. My dad wants him to be a lawyer. So, and we're all going to live together, and we're all going to, like, pool our money together, and we're going to be one big, strong family unit. And then contrast that to Ireland, who gets where Ireland's like America, where very individual, uh, score high for individualism. Where I was 23 when I left Ireland, and I went out into the world, and my parents always kind of encouraged me to be whoever I wanted to be. And even though I'm over here now, my parents would never call me and say, "You need to come back. You need to come back." They would always let me make my own decisions, and that's just a part of it, right? So if you're going to compare that to business, if you're going to open a business over here, or if you're working in a business over here, you have to realize that the group is always going to come before the person, and people value working in teams over here. Okay, like it even comes down to food. Like at lunchtime, sometimes if I'm working hard, I just want to sit down by myself and eat my lunch, eat a sandwich, eat my lunch by myself. And I might go back into the office, and the Thai staff might say, where did you have lunch? And I'll say, "Oh yeah, I already had lunch." And they might say, "Oh, you ate alone? I can't believe it." Like, they're kind of shocked, and because in Thailand people will eat together, and it's part of the culture, right? So it's group orientated, collectivism. So when it comes to business as well, because of people are very group orientated, it can mean that, like, when you're working over here, that people are less independent and more interdependent. So they rely on the other members of the group to make decisions. Decisions are made like by consensus, which is like it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, the Japanese are a great example of a collectivism culture, like, taking over. In the 1970s, the Toyota and the car manufacturing was huge. I mean, and that's all Japanese way. It's kind of it's not just Thailand here. It's Asian culture basically. The next dimension we have is uncertainty avoidance, and that means how well people are okay with not knowing the future. Some societies embrace not knowing what's going to happen into the future, while other societies want to try and have it as predictable as possible, and they kind of develop institutions and rules around that to try and alleviate uncertainty. Okay, if you look at Ireland scores pretty low for uncertainty avoidance, 35 out of 100, meaning that people are okay. They're okay with risk taking. They're okay with not knowing what's going to happen in the future, and that breeds a kind of society that's more focused on innovation, risk taking. And if you think about it, it's probably one of the reasons why the tech industry, Google, Apple, TikTok, I think TikTok has just announced 2,000 jobs gonna come to Dublin. It's one of the reasons why the tech industry would have set up in Ireland, because the tech industry it's totally uncertain. I mean, it's going out into the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen next year, how tech will develop. We've no idea, and you're going to need a workforce that are going to be able to embrace change, basically. Whereas if you contrast that with Thailand, it scores 64 out of 100, so it scores high. So it means that people are less comfortable with uncertainty. Basically, there are a lot more rules and regulations. You got to go through the red tape, a lot more formal documents to be signed, and because of that, things move a little bit slower, but they're slower because they want to be more predictable. I think the COVID-19 is a good example of that, when it comes to people, right? Irish people, let's be honest, any Irish people out there, we're a bit rogue, we're a bit roguish, we'll take chances. The Irish, we're risk takers, which is good. It's entrepreneurial, right? You need to be a risk taker. But when the government said, like, you're not allowed to travel, and Irish people, they didn't follow the rules. People weren't wearing masks. Where you contrast that to Thailand, government said, everyone wear your mask. Everyone wears masks. Government locked everything down. Everything locked down. There's a cat jumping out there. Government said you can't go outside after 10 p.m. last year for the curfew. Yeah, people followed it, right? So I think that's a good example of the differences in culture right there. Okay, so we have 3 more dimensions. Now I'm not going to read through them all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link to the Geert Hofstede's website in the description, and then you can go on. It takes a minute. You'll be able to compare and contrast the culture of your country with Thailand or any other country that you want. The other 3 criteria are masculinity, long-term orientation, and indulgence. Long-term orientation, actually, this one I don't really agree with. Thailand scored higher than Ireland and America. Means that, like, from his research, Geert Hofstede's research, it means that Thailand, they look into the future more than, say, Irish and the Americans, which is, I don't believe that's true. I think Thailand is very much focused in the moment and day to day, whereas I think, I mean, for myself, I like to plan into the future. So as always, folks, research needs to be critiqued, and that's the critique I have on this. Now, I hope you enjoyed that, folks, but we're not finished yet. We're in Thongla. We're in a fancy schmancy neighborhood here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you out just outside here, and I'll show you some of the big houses where, like, the very, very wealthy people live. And as I was saying about power distance, maybe you can think, where do these people score on the social hierarchy? Alright, let's go. So the Thongla area has a lot of back alleys, and in these back alleys you have a lot of big houses gated off, where the other half live. It's the very wealthy area of Bangkok, and let's just have a little look around. Look at this one. This is beautiful. That looks like European style, or San Francisco or something like that. Very nice. Even the condos around here look different. I mean, this is an amazing looking building. It looks to be kind of, I don't know, French style. It's definitely not the type of condo that you would see in Bangkok. I mean, this looks like it's massive. You can tell the rooms are massive. We have one of these fancy nightclubs in here called the Emerald. Fancy looking place. The one behind me is massive. That's huge. There's loads of massive, and you know, the only thing is there's no pavement, there's no footpath, so you want to keep your wits about you when you're walking around these alleyways, because you might get a slap of a car, as they say. I hope you enjoyed that comparison of Thai culture versus Western culture, Ireland and America particularly. I'm on the way home to edit this video and stick it on the internet, as they say, and I'll catch you on the next one. And if you want me to do a live stream tomorrow, leave a comment below and I'll do it, maybe around 5:30 Thai time. But if you leave a comment and there's enough interest, I will do one for you, folks. I'll see you on the next one.